Good afternoon, esteemed viewers. This is Fine TV Gambia, your only viewpoint. Today we are inside the auditorium of the Gambia College to witness the first ever launch of the History Club of the University of the Gambia. This is the first time this particular kind of club is set up at the University of the Gambia since the school was established. Stay tuned as we progress with the program.
Jilang ka kutri batamanin tamaganin ma Lufaulum pangnin so enjoy Mamanda kunnin ke banafa Timbin trugum to man sayirani jata saylang Mama tamba jammitilo banda Ilyasa Fede sar jammitilo banda Ilyasa Bangku kantala di masa mankile Jammutalla tela di masa mankile Tenan tambani muskodo kema Salia ndambungo to kunni manoda Oh mama tamba fayo Jiraka Ilyasa Jamme jilang ka kutri batamanin tamaganin ma Lufaulum pangnin so enjoy Mamanda kunnin ke banafa Timbin trugum to man sayirani jata saylang Mama tamba jammitilo banda Ilyasa Fede sar jammitilo banda Ilyasa Bangku kantala di masa mankile Jammutalla tela di masa mankile jabiye Tenan tambani muskodo kema Salia ndambungo to kunni manoda Oh mama tamba fayo Jiraka Ilyasa
We welcome all the attendees, the executives of the History Society. You are welcome to this event, and all other personalities that have come to grace this occasion. You are also welcome to this event. The president, that is the interim president of the History Society, our humble boss, you are welcome to this gathering, and that is Idrissa Doumbouya. He is the interim president of the History Society. So all this great work that is being seen here is championed by Idrissa, and we are his lieutenants. So thank you very much for coming. The program guide is, we say the first itinerary of the program guide is the arrival of the guests, which we have witnessed here. But not forgetting also the drama team that is present here, and as well as the one that is going to recite a poem here for us. We have the drama team that is going to give us an interlude. And also we have a poem that is also going to participate in the interludes that are going to take place as the activities unfolds. And we also have the choral team that are present. They are also present here, and they'll be part of the entertaining team in order to make this program very entertaining and educative. So we have them here now. The program guide, as it is not printed and given to the attendees, that we have to read it so that you can know what is going on. So first of arrival of guests, that is the first activity that is going to be executed. And the other one we have, the president is going to give a welcoming remark. That is the president here, the president of the interim executives of the History Society. And as well as we going to have From there, we have the Kora Entertainment. From the Kora Entertainment, then we move to the poetry performance. The poetry performance from there, then we have speech by the guest speaker, and we also have panel discussion, drama after the speech by the guest speaker is going to be done, and from there we have the drama. From the drama we have panel discussions. From there we have another poetry performance. From there we continue.
Wake up this morning. Have any one of us drank mono before we come here? Or Mr. Jallo, have you eaten lechiri before you came here today? But for me, I can say I started with Bahal before I come here. And that is, in fact, part of our historical base. I would want historians to recommend for UNESCO to adopt Bahal as part of our cultural heritage, as they adopted Benachid for Senegal, as part of Senegal's cultural heritage. Gambia should adopt that too. Historians, you should take note of that, right? Thank you very much, Mr. Al-Hassan Ba. Before we call on the president, it is very important that we all rise and sing the national anthem, because it is also part of our history as a country. For us to all, with due respect, for us to all rise with the company of the Kora here. Let us sing the national anthem before we proceed. 1, 2. Thank you very much. A society that whose membership are students pursuing history in the University of the Gambia, who are very much interested in not burying the history of this country, but also seeing ways in which we can use our history to further the development of this country. Without wasting much time, I would invite the interim president, who is Mr. Idrissa Doumbia, a history major in the University of the Gambia in his final year, if I may be right, to give a welcoming address. Mr. President.
Members of the panelists, Honorable Dr. Baba Gale Jallo, Professor Oguyemi, Dr. Mr. Kasim Toure, and then the ladies and gentlemen present here. Good morning and then welcome to the grand launching of the History Society University of the Gambia. As students of the University of the Gambia majoring in history, we felt that there is a need and necessity to dig back into our cultural heritage, our history, our tradition, and then to revive a society that was inexistent, that our lecturers in the past were championing. And then due to certain factors, this society died, and then we felt that it is a duty upon us as students of history who dig into our past to revive this society and then make it a meaningful one for that matter. Our gathering here today is very much meaningful, and then it is on the right course for the development of our nation. As students of history, a discipline that will interrogate our past, a discipline that will interrogate how we coexist as a society, a discipline that interrogates the diversity of our people. How can we use history to address some of our societal problems? And how can we find history at the center stage of national development as the theme for the day calls for? That is why we are gathered here. We are not only gathered here, or we want to take history away from the traditional perspective, which many people term history as a narration or a storytelling. The history is beyond narration. It is beyond storytelling. It could be used as a tool for the development of this country. It could be used to address most of the pressing issues that we have faced in our communities. It could be used to cater for our societal, our economic problem. So that is the reason we are gathered here today to launch the University of the Gambia History Society, the first of its kind, and with the help of God and then my team members, and then the students in general, we are hopeful of having a successful adventure for the future. We welcome you all to this August gathering. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It is all about taking history from the traditional perspective to a level where it can offer us the economic, the political, and of course, national development. We have master's degree holders, doctorate degree holders here in the hall with us to see how best we can discuss as individuals and as people part of the history of our country to see how we are going to move forward. As the Mr. President rightly said, moving history from the traditional perspective to a level where we would see history being the champion of our economic development, but our way forward to as a nation. Like the previous speaker rightly alluded, we will be having a statement to be delivered by the guest speaker, who is Dr. Adetunye Oguyemi, if I may be right, sir. I may miss the pronunciation. But we will be having a speech to be delivered by him, but also, distinguished guests, permit me to recognize the presence of the Minister of Education of the University of the Gambia, Mr. Kemu Conte. Also, permit me to recognize on the high table Mr. Ahmad Gay, a history teacher, should I say government and history teacher at the Great Nusrat Senior Secondary School. My guys will be clapping because we are only Nusratarians, I would say. Okay, Mr. Gay, you are already welcome. Moving on now, we would just invite a little of a kora performance by the Jali Jobat. Yes, that.
Dunia mulane ti jongo bedolo jongo tala bolo nango fanga tawanga tulo tabako la tabako kowe kibaro buka kunovo barada kabate dani subola mube oni me atakanya hani baji ngende bamba ni barakanda kadonga Fali mama sare sula kandawe Safinga susu bala mazade dunia sire bulo dindam ko safinga susu balo Mansura kila samsidini Afawoli Yiri jambo bebe duwala fa subhanallah Kano ne badiyada Ali maje musuman se mansiya barakan da zuwan nola Ngam fomo jelundo lamko kaza mazibanko kampe kendo lejela. President ya dongo bibi darame. Bibi daramo le wundi mfatu jawara. Pele sisi nyaro le sisi fatu sisi. Sire jambe bafela. Siri fobe sanje bade bubakar haidara. Napali masoko. Katan na fatu kure te nyabo kono. Mama kumba bala sara dingo basada. Hadi kumba kumba penda sar. Mama kumba bala sara dingo. Kinde jula sankaranga. Musia dilambe ati nyala kinde jula sankaranga. Mama droba fado. Mama kumba bala sara dingo masayata. Hadi kumba kumba penda sar. Mama kumba bala sara. Fanta bayo bayo sara. Fanta bayo bayo sara. Tiba jago walima. Malpanda kumba minyalang kamara walima jolori. Tiba jago walima. Malpanda kumba minyalang kamara walima jolori sudu. Jifini kula bantang taranta bakana bantang. Mar bantang bedang kungu jane anyo kalabore jaku bantang be ferafenye bangka bantang be burong askeba sise kana mantu mori jomi jamu biadala. Babe kalle jallo. Fulo mete keke sanawe. Fulo mete keke dontola. Buturunga na ni mbunjese. Kunutilo nesa ni malore ni fulo lumbaye. Kumbujwa sankaraka. Dala kumbuka mani dala tiba ni konse. Kumbete ni sodi mete kilo kendo kilo 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 bulu fele ni. Wallahi. Mama kumba bala sara dingo masayata. Hani kumbe kumba penda sar. Mama kumba bala sara dingo. Yaki pula fala musa malamu menda. Walumu mandia. Sama kena si mamman sudah bangku kampada sabari. Zeko fela boy, mangkasino daya denye pada zaman.
Thank you very much, Jelly Jobat. To me alone, you would have performed the entire day. Yes, so we have to move on now. We would have another poetry performance later on, but now permit me to invite Mr. or Dr. Adetunye Ogoyemi. But before he comes on board, let me just do a brief introduction of who our guest speaker is. Doctor is an associate professor of economic history at the Obafemi Awolowo University in Ife in Nigeria. He's also a lawyer and solicitor, and also an advocate of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. This year is Doctor's 28th year at the Nigerian Bar. Until July 2020, Doctor was acting head of the Department of History at the Obafemi University. He has been a visiting scholar at the Ambrose Ali University in Nigeria and an external examiner for several African universities. Doctor specializes in history of budget and finance in Africa, and he is also a consultant to the Appropriation Committee of the Nigerian National Assembly. Doctor is also married and blessed with children. Yes, that is very clear. So may I now invite Doctor to the platform as the honorable guest speaker of this occasion.
Thank you for the rendition of my name. It's actually an African name. I suspect that if it were to be, say, James or say Clinton or Ibrahim, you pronounce it appropriately, which are actually foreign names in Africa. But thank you so much. You have done well. I salute first the Vice Chancellor of the University of the Gambia for inviting me as a visiting scholar to this university. I also thank Dr. Mamake Bojang, who was actually my student at the Obafemi University, but now my host here. That's beautiful. I appreciate you all at the high table, and I thank Mr. Bakari Diba. That's the president? All right. Okay. Thank you for the letter that I received. Now, you have given me the task of interrogating the issue that has to do with history in the milieu of national development. History at the center stage of national development. And probably, I suspect, just as my students also in Nigeria will also suspect, that some people immediately you say you are reading history in the university becomes some people become apprehensive as to, and what are you going to be doing with history? That's the normal thing that people ask. Now, this question have been asked since the time of Trevor Roper. It is not now. In fact, those who ask the questions about history and its relevance in national development, or at all in the relevance in terms of human development, have always wondered whether history has a place, has a contribution to make. Now, these challenges, if you like, this apprehension, call to question the utility of history. That is, what is the utilitarian value of history? And that is what we'll be interrogating. In less than 15 minutes, we'll solve it. 15 minutes, I'll be done. I wonder why people ask questions as to whether records of events, both good or bad, challenges, both successes and failure, and documentary evidence of actual achievements of people are relevant in the reinventing of their successive achievements. I just wonder why. I wonder why. Whether we need documentary evidence, whether we need to actually plan on the basis of what we have done in the past, our failures, our successes, and the lessons learned from them. Imagine people asking whether the record of the past is necessary. Now, there is a man, a scientist, also a historian. His name is W.F. Stolper. He wrote a book in 1963. He titled it, Planning Without Facts, Lessons in Nigeria's Development Orientation. 1963, London Longman. Stolper wondered how in the world it could be possible for Nigerian authorities to be making national development plans. And Nigeria has had 5 different national development plans since 1960. 5. He wondered how we could be making development plans without making history as the center of that planning in Nigeria. Because by what authority are you going to plan for the future when you have not factored into your calculus the previous challenges you had in the past about that development? In other words, the utilitarian value of history is defined in 2 things. 1, institutional memory. The historian has the infinite capacity to store up, not only in his memory, but also in records that can be retrieved either from the museum or from archives, the records of times past with respect to the development orientation of a people and the mistakes they have made in the past. Now, planning in the present and in the future will factor in the mistakes made in that past and use it as the germ, if you like, the instrument of avoiding such mistakes in the future. That is the first documentary fact. That is institutional memory. The second has to do with issues that calls into the question the utility of history in the area of statistics. History is essentially statistical. And that is why in my country, we do not just say history, we say historical sciences. Historical sciences. That's actually my title. My long title in my university is Associate Professor of Historical Sciences. Why is it statistical? Must it be mathematical for it to be statistical? The answer is no. Mathematics can be statistical, yeah. But so also is history. Statistics has to do with records. Records that are scored either in terms of their significant value or drawing from a sample space and using it, the rules derived from it, as theory to generalize, and then propose either a deviation from that record or a correlation with it or an agreement. In fact, suggesting an alternative to that statistical revelations. So what is the statistical value of history? Records. 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 I can't say it enough. Now, some people don't care about records. Let me just ask a challenge here. Is there anyone here who still has the receipt that was given to him for paying for his primary school education? You still store it? Oh, you've thrown it away. It's part of the statistics. It's part of the facts. Now, do you know that that record will show not less than 5 truths? 1, the date you started primary school. 2, the person who received the money from you. 3, the amount that you paid. 4, your name as at the time that you were coming to school. So that when you go tamper with your name, let's say, for example, you commit a crime. We are not praying you commit any crime. And then you want to jettison that name to take on a new one and then pretend that you were not there again. Someone like that in Nigeria did it. His name was Evans. He committed a crime. He changed it to Evan. Of course, you know, if you remove one letter from your name, it's another person. I hope you know that. If someone is Adetunji and you say it's Adetunji, it's another human being. If it's Muhammadu and you say it's Muhammad, you are talking of another person. Muhammad and Muhammadu are not the same. Absolutely not the same in law. So, your exact name, if anyone wants to trace your criminal record, therefore, will trace it to the exact name that you yourself submitted for registration in the primary school. And finally, 5, the name of the school that you actually attended. These 5 statistical evidence will show exactly the picture of your time and how you applied to history and for development. Hence, if an economist, for example, begins to do a statistical revelation, if you like, correlation, with a view to studying the history of how school fees have been increasing in the Gambia in the last 50 years, and you are about 55 years now, it will point to that time that you paid only $1 as school fee for a whole session. So when people begin to say, oh no, how could it be possible? You know, there are certain examples we give today that when you say, I did this with this amount of money, people may want to query and say, probably you are exaggerating. They didn't know that actually it was the truth. Now, imagine drawing up that receipt. It becomes a documentary evidence, tenable in court, anywhere, to justify your claim that you paid only one boot, $1. That receipt becomes a statistical revelation. Now, how does the historian keep these records of statistics? In 3 ways. 1, he archives them in the archives. He puts them in the archives. 2, in the museums. It can also be found in museums. And 3, it can be found in the creative capacity of the people, not even kept in any of these 2. For example, a moblet, if you like, an Austin car or Austin Morris car that was bought maybe by Caraba in the year 1946. If you have not allowed that car to be crushed to produce some other things, the evidence that you see the car physically, even though it may no longer be working, is an evidence to show, 1, that a car was bought. 2, that in the 1940s, there had been roads in the Gambia. Because without road, cars will not move. Cars don't move on ways, they move on roads. Not way, but road. Road means that a vehicle can pass. Way is for men. So, you begin to investigate which company produced that car. I tell you, the car that was used by the premier of the western part of Nigeria in the year 1947 is still in the museum, Natural History Museum of the Obasanjo University. A Rolls Royce, 1947. That car was actually made in 1939 and was gifted by King George VIII to the Ooni of Ife. Now, imagine a 1947 car. Is that not evidentiary enough to prove that a car was already being used by an African? Ooni of Ife, for your information, was the first African to be made a governor. Governor Western Region, 1947, Nigeria. When some country had yet begun to use bicycles, some had already started using vehicles, motor cars. Another evidence. These 3 ways in our creativity, in our actions, in our day-to-day sayings, actually record for us the statistics we use for planning. Finally, have you noticed that in our orature, oratures are those words we speak? It could be our poetry, it could be our music, it could even be, in some instances, some dance and dance steps. Just as I just heard here. Also record our history inadvertently, without even planning for it. There is a musician in Nigeria who sang a song. He said, if anything is so beautiful and you want to acquire it, that he doesn't care, he can spend 1,000 naira on it. Now, a generation born just in the 1980s or 1990 will wonder, 1,000 naira? What does 1,000 naira mean? I mean, small money. That will just amount to small money. I mean, what is that? But it tells you the history of inflation. That money, the money is cited, tells you the history of inflation in Nigeria. That there was a time in Nigeria that 1,000 naira would build a house. Today, if you don't have up to 9 million naira, you can't build a house. Well, you can put shelter. You can call it shelter. But surely not a house. Shelter. Maybe to screen you away from the elements, the sun and the rain. But a place where you actually want to live. 8 million minimum. Now, the history of inflation are found in our orature. Just as in the Gambia, some people could sing the history, or they could sing the economic activities that was happening in the Gambia in the 1970s. And when they sing, you will see that the ways of life, the inflationary trends, the exchange rates, the type of money they were using
will be included in that orature, in that music, in the lyrics of that music, without even planning for it. 30, 40 years after, it becomes a reference point as to the extent at which economic activities went in that time past. So in practical terms, therefore, how do you bring history into planning? Before I say that, just 5 points. Let me say, without sounding immodest, that this is the 12th year that I've been consultant to the National Assembly of Nigeria on planning and budget. And I'm a historian. You see, why not an economist? The reason is that in my country, history is so critical to development because of institutional memory. And the National Assembly wants to see that person who could say in a single point, how far we've gone in the last 80 years or 60 years, and what we made mistakes on, and how to avoid them in preparing the budgets. Every October, I must be summoned by the National Assembly to come and help plug loopholes, wastages in the budget. A historian. Because the art and science of fraud, is perfected in the budget. A very good way by which anybody, a leader or a civil servant or a public servant, can steal clean, and you will thank him for stealing. You will not be able to trace it. It's through the budget. Because budget is the financial statement of any state, detailing 3 things. 1, expenditure. 2, transfers in terms of debt or amortization. And 3, receipts, revenue. Yes. Because if a bird has learned to fly without perching, the hunter too has learned to shoot without missing. I mean, if you are so good that you will shoot and you will not miss, the bird too has learned not to perch at all, to fly without perching. That is it. Now, what history does to national planning is that it brings the record of errors done in the past, compares it with the proposals of today, and suggests ways of avoiding such errors in the future. That's the work of the historian. Now, it does it everywhere, anywhere, at all times. So there is no specific place you can say the historian need work, must work, should work, or can work. There's no such thing. Except that there are certain areas that are exclusive to them. Number 1, the museums and monuments. 2, archives. 3, giving oral evidence in court in respect of ownership to land. In the Nigerian courts, 80% of the cases in the high courts of Nigeria are on contestation for land. Who owns this land? It's our land. It's not your land. These are the contestation, 80% on land alone. Now, who gives evidence as to who does this land belong to? The Nigerian courts have learned to believe and to trust historians. So they will summon them. You will say, yes, it's me, it's my land because my father owned it. Of course, if you say that your father owned the land, you already know that you are lying. Because your father couldn't possibly have created the land. Because it's a lie. To say that your father owned the land is a lie. No father has ever owned any land. But you can say that you met your father there. Can you see? You met him there. That's correct. You could be occupying the land. That's right. Because he couldn't have created that land. Because no human beings create any land. Now the issue is, trace the ancestry of your dad to that land as at the time you met it. 2 principles. 1, the principle of first occupancy.
That is the first person to occupy that land from a dateless past. That is a past that had no date. As at the time there was no dating, you should be able to trace it. It's a first principle. The second principle is the principle of established order. That is, yes, I have not been occupying this place from a dateless past, but the people that were occupying it, I challenged them. I beat them hands down and I defeated them. So through the principle of conquest, I'm the occupier of this land. That's another principle. We call it PEO, principle of established order. These are the two principles of proving possession of land and the right to title to land anywhere in Africa. So no one can say, I own a land. You already, immediately you just say that Nigerian court, they know you are a liar. You're just a liar. You can't hold any land. So is it that you conquered the people that were there and you possessed it? If you cannot trace that history to before 1700, it is fake. Because after 1700, all the states of the world had already become settled. Since the Treaty of Westphalia, 1648, the idea of sovereignty of states, owning land and territoriality had already been sealed. Historians know what I'm talking about. So if you cannot trace your ancestry as that ancestry that had been in possession of the land before 1700, you are fake. So any other attenuating circumstance is that you produce a receipt, you produce a conveyance saying that you bought it, isn't it? Now, you know you can produce, for example, in Lagos, the total land area of Lagos is 3,500 square kilometers, and the population 20 million. Now, you will know that it will lead to two things: land hunger, isn't it, and land war. We have special people who specialize outside of the police in Lagos who will help you to bring complete violence on anybody on the top of a land so that you can build your house. So the possessor of the land could sell it to person number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sell it to 20 people. It is he who has the greatest number of violence and capacity to visit that violence on anybody that will possess it. The police does not work in that area. So what do? The other person will go to court to challenge you, to say you are building on his ancestral land. And the court will request him, how do you know it's your land? He said, my father owned it. Say, Mr. Please stop lying. Do you mean that your father was occupying the land? I said, yes, that's exactly. Your father couldn't have owned it. He possessed the land. That is, possession is just 90% ownership. It's not 100% ownership. So, how do you get it? Say, oh, the family head gave it to me. Then they will investigate the father whether he has authority to do it. In all of this, the historian is always getting invitation. And that invitation cannot be free. I mean, you want to invite me to a court to give evidence and testimony, and I give evidence to say that this land belongs to this person. First of all, you know it's like committing suicide, isn't it? The people can just waylay you on the way and you are dead. Or they will allow you to give the testimony and then your freedom will not be guaranteed after that testimony. So it's risky. So you pay. And you pay in such a way that it will be able to compensate me significantly. These are the direct ways by which the historian today can be engaged. But talking about national development, just as I said earlier, it is only in two ways. One, the documentary value. Two, the institutional memory value. And I'm adding the third, the statistical value. So the historian has become so relevant today that even when you begin to talk about institutes that are training those who are guides, that is tourist guides. A tourist comes to the Gambia and he wants to travel around the country and goes through the major drainage of the Gambia, which is called River Gambia. It is the historian that has the qualification to take him around. Now, first I salute you, the Historical Society of the Gambia. I noticed that you don't have that society, but you have a University History Society, isn't it? Now, let me advise you that what you need to do first is to get the Historical Society of the Gambia first. And they have branches of that Historical Society of the Gambia in the University of the Gambia, one, in other universities, maybe private, and then in other institutes. Anyone who is a record officer in any ministry is a historian, either by training or by equity. If he's not registered with you, he has no right to practice. He has no right. Otherwise, all manners of people will just come into the profession and rubbish it. So there must be a historical society. Follow closely the example given that is shown in Ghana and in Nigeria. First, we have a historical society registered by the Corporate Affairs Commission. And after being registered by the Corporate Affairs Commission, stating the objectives, given the constitution, the functions, the officers, then it is disaggregated at the level of the universities and institutes. It is not only in universities that you have historical societies. You have historical societies in religious groups. Among the Sanusiya, the Qadiriya, the Sunni, and the Shiite in Nigeria, there are historians resident in their headquarters. And they are members of the Historical Society of Nigeria. You are so big a profession that you cannot only be in the University of the Gambia. Because people can challenge you in court and say, by what authority are you claiming to be a historical society? Where is your certificate of registration by the Corporate Affairs Commission? You don't have it. Get registered at the top. Disaggregate yourself at the university level. Ensure that the students' union, we call it Dean of Student Affairs. Do you have it here?
Directorate of Students.
Oh, beautiful. Get anchored with it, registered with it. The reason is that you are a legal personality. Immediately you say you begin to bind yourself together into a society. You become a legal society, a legal personality. And that personality can be used first for the sake of acquiring assets and then for liabilities. So when you begin to give dues, you pay your dues to the Gambian Historical Society. Who manages the due? Those dues, that is your membership dues, you must pay. And this, your membership dues, will now become the assets. How does he manage it? What if he runs away with the money? Your constitution will protect you, the assets, the liabilities, and will publicize you such that you can be at par with the Historical Society of Nigeria, and you can demand from your National Assembly a right to access to participate in national development. Because finally, people may want to challenge you that we already have our representatives in the National Assembly. We don't need you. I mean, you are gate crashing. But because you are a professional body of those who know and those who should know, you are qualified to demand to be recognized as participant observer in the national development enterprise. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you so much for inviting me, and I wish you success.
Chusano, Abintolo Yale Gambia.
Layla, layla, fama layla, kubina tumala.
It is logic, not magic. The unconquerable and uncompromising spirit of Madiba Nelson Mandela is still hovering in his grave like a bird in a chicken cage. See,
Chusano, 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 Abintoluyali Gambia.
Sharpening the salt in the cerebrum and the cerebellum through meditation, arts, and strategy, with motion of sad and happy persons from the history before and the moving pages. Writers must write, actors act, and historians must story in front of the open universe.
We need determination for the preservation of our culture so that we can preserve it for the next generation who will be inheriting our beautiful nation.
Let Gambia be the dreamer's dream, so that we can plan our history, grow, nurture, and harvest this fruit. For this is our identity, our personality, and reality. Looking at a beautiful history designed with beautiful fabric of pride and might, where our name and fame will shine so bright, narrating how our ancestors pounded their feet so magnificent and delightful, dancing to the tune of their own glory.
We live in a modern life because history makes us wise like a mice to realize the wrongs of our past and advise our leaders to slide and rise our nation above precise and size like paradise. They say agriculture is the backbone of every country, but I say history is the entire body of the country. When they say without mass, there is no, when they say without mass, there is no exchange of currency. I say no, without history, there is no mass, agriculture or science.
What is history? And who is history? See, these are the questions that always knock and cup my mind whenever the thought comes to mind. See, history teaches us a lot of things in our life. It molds and it nurtures and molds us to be a better self, to be in our better vision of ourselves. History. We were taught that history teaches us the study of important past events. But hey, it takes time to write. So listen, let me tell you. A reference.
Chusano, 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 Abintoluyali Gambia. You see, Sadar Kairaba Jawara, Kwame Nkrumah, Nelson Mandela, Edward Francis Moore. You see, history will never die because what's the past will never die. So believe me when I say history is just the life. Without history, we won't be able to remember our great people. Those people that made us to remember today. Those people that fight so that we can be liberated. Let's celebrate those people. So I say, let's go back to history to know how our people live, how rich antique our cultures were embraced, how morality was not choice. That's where we belong. That's why today we are smiling and laughing. That's why today we're here to celebrate our history. So history and historians to the world. Chusano, 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 Abintoluyali Gambia, you Gambia. Gambia kama na wulubanko na katanga doku wake anindua fobesi balu kambengo kono taram fambulo ning kairo lungo bela alamati lingo yenna manyalu kanta kataja malu na alfalu kang nankali na lotanko bambandingola nalahi dolu ne kuta yandi kafundi nyoma alatala mansaba Gambia sitara fofautu nyakunu. Well, that's the national anthem. I guess you like it. Thank you very much.
Degree holder in African history. Is also a bachelor's degree holder in development studies and history during the University Extension Program of the Gambia. That is the University Extension Program of 1999, if I may be right. Yes, we are putting record straight. Uh, Mr. Kasim Ture is also the Director Human Resource at the Gambia College. He's an HTC holder too in history, a major in history, and a minor in English language. He also did his O levels. From 1995, when many of us seated here would have been very young, Mr. Kasim Ture was in the classroom handing down tuition to students then and until now. I can see some faces, 1995, some of us were not here. Then Mr. Kasim Ture was also a teaching assistant at the University of the Gambia from 2000 to 2003. This Mr. Kasim Ture that we are talking about is from Fonyi in Kasang. If you would know Kasang, a very beautiful hideout. They have a very beautiful hideout in Fonyi. If you've not been going on trek, please try one and tell the people to take you to Kasang. You know when to come back. He's also married with four daughters. That is Mr. Kasim Ture for you. To Dr. Baba Gale Jalo. Dr. Baba Gale Jalo holds a PhD in African history. So you would know that the panelists that we have here are historians that would be able to deal with the topic that we have in place. Dr. Baba Gale holds a PhD in African history from the University of California at Davis, a Master of Arts in Liberal Studies from Rutgers University, New Jersey, and a Bachelor's of Arts in History and Political Science from Forabe College and the University of Sierra Leone. He has taught African history and African and world history at Carrington University in Omaha, Nebraska. From 2011 to 2015, and at La Salle University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, from 2015 to 2017. In 2017 and 2018, Dr. Jallo was a visiting professor in the MA program, that is the master's program in African history here at the University of the Gambia. Dr. Jallo's academic and public interest books include, you must have known that Dr. Baba Gale Jallo is also a writer, include The Adventures of Al-Katan, that was published in 2001, The Prison of Letters of Dr. J.B. Bankwa in 2020, Childhood Days in Chaku Bantang in 2020, Defined Dictatorship, published in 2017, The Catholic Voice in Ghana, published in 2015, Leadership in Colonial Africa, published in 2014, Leadership is in Post-Colonial Africa, published in 2014, the Kwame Nkrumah cartoons, published in 2014, The Graveyard Cannot Pray, published in 2013, and Rambler's Charts, published in 2012. His research interests include the history of colonial and post-colonial Africa, press freedom, censorship and state of information in Africa, Catholic and social justice in Africa, cartoon studies, and most recently, transitional justice and truth commissions. Dr. Jallo was, until February 2020, the Executive Secretary of the Gambia's Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission, TRRC. He is currently supervising students working on their thesis in the University of the Gambia's Master's Program in African History. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, that is Dr. Baba Gale Jallo Fund. Like I said, we will also be having Kemo on board. Unfortunately, we do not have the record here of who Kemo is, but like I said, university students, you would know he was, am I right to say was or is? A student of the University of the Gambia. And as I said, a youth councillor at KMC, a vibrant member of the United Democratic Party, the Secretary General of the Youth Wing of the United Democratic Party. That is Mr. Kemo Bojang for you. Ladies and gentlemen, like it was said earlier on, Joining me on the panel discussion will be Mr. Al Hassan Bah, Comrade Bah, as many would call him. But like I said, we would be having questions for the members of the panel with regards to where we are as a country and how can we move forward. But before Comrade Ba would come, I would just throw this question to Dr. Jallo. We would be starting the questions now. I do not know whether this mic can move up to where we have Doctor. It can. Right. So, very briefly, Doctor, we would just want to know first who we are as a nation and as a people.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you to the Historical Society of the UTG for inviting me to be a panelist at this panel discussion. I'm really honored to be here. And it's a great initiative. Follow it up and consider the recommendation of the professor as well to try a historical society of the Gambia. That's a very good idea that you might want to explore. Who we are as a people and as a nation, that's a very big question, sir. It's a very big question, but through the study of history, we know who we are. First of all, we are human beings. Human beings, humanity is the first yardstick of whatever society there is in this world. So whatever you consider yourself, whether you consider yourself a Muslim, a Christian, a Jola, a Fulani, or whatever, we are human beings first of all. And we should behave as human beings first of all. And we should treat everyone else as a human being first of all. Now, that said, then we are a country of a little over 2 million people. We were not colonized up to a point in history, and then we were colonized around the 1880s to now. Around 1965, we gained independence as the Gambia. We became a republic in 1971. So we are a republic of the Gambia. We are a community that is condemned or blessed. Let's say blessed to live together, to grow together, to develop together, or to stay back together. So there's a lot of work that historians and history students and history itself as a discipline can do in further helping us identify who we are and then helping us move forward as a country and as a people. But the short answer to your question is that we are human beings first, and then we are Gambians, and we are a country in what is called, I don't like using this term, the developing world. Developing to where? We should define or redefine some of these concepts that are imposed on us by the West. But we are a country in West Africa, one of several countries in West Africa. I think that might be a brief answer to your question, sir.
If you have a professor and you have an editor or former editor of a leading newspaper in the country who has seen the ivy towers of lead universities in the world, but has to leave that to come down to set record straight is immense. So, Dr. Jallo, thank you for being here. On behalf of this generation, we say thank you, that you have shown leadership with a difference. Because I said this, 1994-95 was the most turbulent period in this country. I still have one of his articles. An egg on the rocks. I think you remember that. That the Gambia was like an egg on the rocks between 1994 until 1996 when we had the presidential elections. I think we all had the records. The professor has virtually done our job. And I think he has literally examined the relevance, the direction for everybody, be it a Nigerian, a Gambian, an African, but at most a human being. The question I am asked to interrogate is also broad, but is worth trying. No discipline in the realms of seeking knowledge is irrelevant. I repeat, no field of study in the domain of people wanting to be educated to make sure that that education or that discipline impacts on their life and in the society where they live and humanity at large is irrelevant. But history is special. I'm not being biased as a historian. It's special because we deal with human activity. What human beings did is what it deals with. Is it a bad record? It's important. It is a good record? It is important. Can it be of a future reference? It is still relevant. So, history, in the quest to bring development at a center stage, or becoming part of every bit of our life, should be promoted at every level. In the beginning of this discussion, we all listened to a kora player. And we were thrilled by the young man's artistic skill using his fingers of those 21 streams. But is he the originator of that tune? The answer is no. It's no. What is the title of the tune? Maybe some of us don't know. That's the Jimbasa. But who? Who has given it the most genuinistic, in a genuine form, is the late Lalo Keba Drame. If you hear it today, you would think he's singing it today. Have we tapped him for cultural heritage in our history? The answer is no. Have we used it to benefit as a touristic moment for a national overhaul? Well, the answer lies in people who make policies. We moved further to say, can we sing the national anthem? We all stood up and sang the national anthem. National anthem for the Gambia, our homeland. Is it a homeland for us? Well, it's a homeland, but a home where there is hunger, reading disease, abject poverty, ignorance of any kind. The homelandness can be questioned. And it went further to say, keep us, great God of nations, for the Gambia ever through. Well, I believe Gambia will be forever till eternity. Well, history, I said, is the center because human beings act the way they believe in their actions. And history punishes them either in good or in bad, based on the acts you have done or you have manifested. Our development and taking it center stage can be broadened. How do we broaden it? You said it's a historical society. What is the primary unit of society? Can we go back to sociology? It's the family. We are all from a family. In the family, you have politics. You have a history. You have an arrangement. It is in a settlement. There is a village, a town, a district, a region. That's where we are born. We move up. How are we socialized? What words do we hear? What values do we live for? How do we even become role models, or who are our reference and role models? It's all what history plays. Like I said, casually to my good elder brother, if this hall was for ST today, or you know ST, I don't think, okay. I don't think we would have fit this place. Not so. So it also boils down to what are we interested in? Is it how we evolved, or we are only interested in where we are? Those are two fundamental questions we must address. The professor talked about institutional memory and the statistics. So for a brief interrogation of it, human beings are the actors of history. We write our own history. They've given a brief biodata of all of us. And I don't think anybody sitting down here is not happy. We have decided to choose that path so that we can inspire, reshape, and refocus a generation of 1 or 2 or perhaps 3. Some are lucky to teach for more than 30, 40, 50 years. Some serve in institutions that are relevant. He said people talked about agriculture. But I said, I don't despise any discipline or any field of study. What I do is I ask you, how are you making an impact into the lives of the Gambians? He might have seen the 70s. I might have been going into schools in the 70s. But historically, by 1977, a small company in the Gambia called GPMB had over $100 million is reserve. That is statistics coming in. Wealth has been created. For who? The Gambians. To be invested so that perhaps today, you and I would not have been where we are. Again, in those days, or there were days in history in this country, urban Gambia does not exist. Don't look at the literal meaning of not exist. I'm using a historical context. Did not exist because key economic survival, better life for tomorrow was found in rural Gambia. Rural Gambia. But the trend changed. Today, you and I, if we don't go to Nusrat Senior Secondary, we felt we have not gone to high school. In his days, every graduate in this country, if you are a teacher and you want your salt, you want to teach at Armitage. It was a citadel. So, for history to move, institutions must be created, and they must reflect the lives and well-being of the people. For history to move, people must sacrifice nation before self. That doesn't mean that you should die in poverty. No. No. What I'm trying to put across is any historian must be patriotic to the core. And you must value truth. And you must value evidence-based. And above all, critical reasoning. then you will reach the apex of fundamental judgment of issues that are there to shape your life and the lives of people who you interact. Perhaps I'll stop at that. Thank you very much.